Listen Lanarkshire is a community radio station governed by the registered charity Getting Better Together Limited. Therefore, the radio station itself retains political neutrality, and any political views or comments aired as part of political discussion programming or otherwise are not the views of Listen Lanarkshire, nor of Getting Better Together Limited. The station has a set of key commitments found on the Ofcom website, and we adhere to all necessary Ofcom rules. For more information or inquiries, please contact us at radio@shotshealthyliving.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, keyboard warriors and brown bin subscribers, we are back. Yes, after a short summer break, spent arguing with the council, chasing down missing leaders and watching golf balls mysteriously reappear closer to the hole, Gerry Brennan. What's the Point returns. I'm your host, Greg Lennon. Tonight I'm joined by two titans of local government. Gerry Brennan, the Belsey Hill bowler himself, part-time policy enforcer, full-time standing order whisperer. Good to see you back after your summer holidays, Gerry.
Thank you, Greg, and as always, it's an extraordinary pleasure to be here.
And the man, Gerry, who needs no introduction but insists on getting one anyway, Motherwell's very own Shooter McGavern, also known as Davy Crichton, Scotland's top political golfer and allegedly an 11 handicap miracle man. I know, allegedly, loosely there. But anyway, good to have you on tonight, Davey. It's been a while.
Been good to be here. Bring a bit of sanity to this insanity room, but here you go.
You be careful, that's a legal disclaimer there. Right, we've got political heat, community scandal, council comedy and just enough gossip to warrant legal advice. We want to hear from you this evening. Call in later at 8 p.m and join the conversation. Share your views, air your local frustrations, or just tell us what you think who the real council leader is. We would really like to hear from you, and you can call us tonight on 07379 399 228. That number again is 07379 399 228. What's bugging you about North Lanarkshire? Is your councillor representing you? All the moans and groans? We want to hear from you. You can also follow us on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram and YouTube at What's the Point, and where the commentary is spicier than your community curry night. And tonight we're officially launching our Patreon account. I've no idea what that means, by the way, but we're officially launching this thing anyhow. If you love the show, want more behind the scenes content, or just want to help us keep the lights on and the FOIs flowing, plus also David, Gerry Brennan has a very expensive coffee habit and we're running out of resources to sustain it. So if you like what we do, why not support it and sign up to your Patreon account? You'll get bonus stuff along with other things. That is all What's the Point, eh? Support us at patreon.com/What's the Point show. And from next week, as if North Lanarkshire wasn't enough and we weren't already gluttons for punishment, we'll be turning our attention to other authorities at your request. We've been asked to cover for Stirling to Falkirk, South Lanarkshire and Mid and West Lothian, and a quick shout out to our old pal and shyster protector, the one and only leader of Mid Lothian Council, Councillor Parry. We hope you've not been called up to give evidence, but we'll keep a firm eye on that. This is politics, raw, local, national and real. This is What's the Point. So gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in this evening to have some political chats, and we'll kick it off, Gerry. So this week we had the Brown Bin Fiasco Mark 2, or Bingate 2 as I like to call it.
We did have Bingate 2 and once again what we saw was a fabulous display of ineptitude, I think. And once again it resulted in not debate, certainly no questioning of council policy, but the exclusion of members of that committee. Shamefully. It's almost as if it's set up.
Oh, of course it's
to see how many people we can eject.
Well, the funny thing is, David, you'll remember a few months ago, back in April, Councillor Paul Damasio was quickly ushered out the chamber for taking in the petition at the brown bins, scrapping the brown bins at that point. And when Paul Damasio was booted out the chamber, let's no kid on about it, and frantically they all jumped to Standing Order 50, which we know, and probably the good folks at home don't, is the new Labour tactic to shut down progressive change for representing their constituents in the wider community. And this is all at the back of El Presidente, Gerry. This is his instructions, and there's no lie about that. So really, in effect, when you're booting members at the chamber for taking public discourse back to the chamber to raise a point of contention, what we're finding is straight away they're jumping on it, not allowing you to get a sentence out, and then basically saying they eject that member under Standing Order 50.
Do you know, twice, it's two examples, Greg, where members have made a very reasonable request under the rules agreed by the council, and on both occasions the request has been either willfully ignored or due to a lack of convening experience or just a lack of skill, ability to remain calm under pressure. They have refused to A, acknowledge what's been asked by the member, and B, to follow that through. And because they struggle with those reasonable requests, because they're going to be asked to give an answer, they run for the hills basically, and then look for any excuse to cause chaos, create mayhem, crazy. And create it's almost to create a position where you look as if Paul looks as if he's unreasonable for simply asking for the rules to be adhered to. So in this occasion, you asked the convener of that committee, Councillor Logue, to get a ruling from Legal and Democratic Services as to whether or not the process for
their process, Gerry, for the process the Labour group wrote
for petitions had been followed correctly.
Standing Order 9.1, I recall.
What happened?
So basically, what happened, David, was I asked to raise. Did you watch it? So for the good folks at home, we will put this in as part of the podcast.
On the agenda is Garden Waste Permit Scheme petition, and the presenting officer is Chief Officer Lyle Rennie, pages 99 to 104, and I'll pass you over to Lyle.
Thanks, Convener. Good afternoon, Councillors. This report is to advise a committee of the investigations carried out in response to the petition to reverse the decision to introduce a charge for North Lanarkshire's garden waste collection. I won't go through the whole report, however I'd like to point out some important points. Section 2.3 in the report, you can see that the budget reallocation has been completed in line with the induction of the scheme. Therefore, should a decision be taken to reverse the induction of the scheme, an additional £1.5 million would need to be identified. Section 2.6 within the report, you can see that over 35,000 homeowners have ordered permits. This amounts to around 30% of private homeowners. In contrast, 2,056 individuals have signed the petition, which amount...
Can I just cross over there? Councillor Lennon has put a note on the chat that he has a point of order. Councillor Lennon, would you like to come through to the committee?
Chair, thanks very much. I put that up at the start of this item. Obviously, Lyle, apologies that it's interfered in your update to the report. Chair, I would wish to make Understanding Order 9 a point of order for the breach of the petitions procedure. The grounds for this is the Council has failed to follow its own published petitions process, particularly at stage 1 and stage 3. And the request is that I ask you as the convener and a legal officer to confirm whether the procedure was followed as described. To assist in this process, Chair, I have emailed you just now, Mark Campbell, Rachel Blair, and every member of the council, because I don't know what members are on this committee, a list of the procedural failings. I trust you'll have it now.
Councillor Lennon, I can only speak for myself at this point. I am finding it extremely difficult to get any kind of clarity in what it is you're saying. I'm seeing
I'm happy
obviously
to go
some
back.
kind of I'm seeing some kind of comment from others in that vein. I'm very sorry, but I cannot make out what it is you're actually saying.
Point of order. Point of order, Chair. There has been a point of order raised under Standing Order 9 in relation to a breach of the petitions procedure. I have sent you, Mark Hamill, a list. I'm asking for your judgment in this, Chair, along with someone from Legal and Democratic Services to pass judgment on whether or not it's been a fair process in the raising of this petition. I trust that's an explanation and you can hear me clearly, Chair.
We're just trying to break down what your comments were there, Councillor Lennon. You say there's been a breach of Standing Order 9 here, and I'm taking advice, and I can pass you over to Mark to clarify that. That subject is in and around the quorum of the committee. Is there some kind of difficulty in and around that?
As I stipulated 3 times now, Chair, obviously the microphone system is conveniently not working today in the chamber, but there has been a breach of the petitions procedure, the very same procedure that the Labour group devised and voted through, Chair, in relation to petitions.
As you know, the petition has made its way to the Chief Officer for the Chief Officer to determine the competency of the petition. That has then been listed and come forward for this agenda.
Point of order again, Chair.
Right,
There
just
has been
hold on a wee second. Hold on a second. If you let me continue to finish the point.
Yep.
The matter is now here as an agenda item on the paper, and the Chief Officer has basically given point after point as to why this petition is not relevant at this particular point. This decision cannot be changed. What you need to do is ask if you want to suspend standing orders or if you want an amendment.
No, Chair. I've already asked the question for you to rule and for you to seek advice from Legal and Democratic Services on whether there has been a procedural breach. The petition was submitted to both yourself and the committee clerk. You sat on the petition without providing any formal response until a follow-up email was provided. It is clearly written within the timeline of events there, Chair, where the breaches have occurred.
With the Chief Officer?
Convener, through yourself, I would ask you to refer it to
There's
Legal
no
and
further
Democratic
debate on this,
Services.
Councillor Lennon. If you do not concur with the ruling of the Chair,
I propose that we use Standing Order number 50 and remove Councillor Lennon from his condescending actions towards the Chair.
Chair,
I second that
again,
as well.
I would go back to Standing
Councillor
Order 10.1.
Lennon, you'll be removed from the committee to allow us to proceed
But tonight,
with
just
the agenda
for
before this
clarity,
committee.
I asked for the Chair to pass over to Legal and Democratic Services a failure in process. Now, as I did that, I'd also emailed Gerry at least 10 areas where the process had failed because we had now reached 2,000 and over 2,800 petition signatories. So the council convener was trying to play this down by saying, listen, this is a small proportion of 64,000 people who bought the brown bins. I can't remember what that's called, but the sticker for them.
So it's the permit.
Sorry. So the permit, the 64,000.
Costs £40 for your
this
permit.
Is the bit, but they also gave away how many people purchased that, and the council has generated £1.5 million. Now, this is recurrent. It can go up in the budget, so we can soon see that the council is now generating £2.5 million for that, plus also your 10% increase in council tax, which is confirmed before the end of the summer. And then on top of that as well, we've got a cost of living crisis, food inflation, everything else all adding in this lovely system to keep taking your money away. Now, the issue that I had in that is with that 1.5 million buried within that report, it was already a saving that was made in 23-24. So the argument coming for the convener and potentially the council to say that where are you going to get this 1.5 million for? What a load of gumph. The 1.5 million doesn't need to be saved. It's additionality. You're generating an income. Yeah. So when I raised that point of order under 9.1, Gerry, I also sent out an email with 10 positions and where the council had failed to implement the process correctly, but I didn't even get near it. So in my usual fashion, Gerry, let's do this. I like a wee joke. So let's look at each of these 10 and done. So let's imagine. Bullseye theme tune. Bullseye theme tune.
You're good at that, Gerry.
In one. There we go. So, in one, Gerry,
we have improper initiation of the petition process. What should have happened? Greg? So, upon receipt by the convener and the clerk, the petition should have triggered stage 1 assessment by strategic communication and engagement and legal democratic services. And what actually happened?
Nothing.
No formal response.
It was ignored.
No referral or action occurred when it was submitted in April, and the result of that was that the petition sat in limbo until the lead petitioner was told 2 months later to submit it again.
Yes.
This time to a different email address after a follow-up email by him. So that was stage 1.
Stage 2, Gerry.
2.
We also have no acknowledgement receipt for the email either, so we didn't even get as much as a response to say, by the way, we've got that. We also had in there notifying the lead petitioner, which you've covered, and then again the consideration of the petition and whether or no the policy applied. So we've got a list, 10 items, 7 items or something, I think it was sent out to all members of that council to make sure that everybody was aware that this petitions process that North Lanarkshire Council's Labour group have written and implemented as critical policy, and how it will deal with petitions, well, it's not worth the back of the fag packet it was written on, because what we had was a bunch of shysters, an absolute bunch of shysters, trying to create havoc and chaos to make sure that a petition that was signed by 2,800 and odd residents of this authority, they could not get a voice. They were not able to participate in community discourse, and it's a disgrace. Indeed. Now, one of the key tactics that I would highlight is again, which I've noticed now a couple of times, made me howl, by the way, and I was later chastised, I think, for the SNP leader for making a mockery, but the whole situation's a mockery, so you've got to laugh at it. When they say they can't hear you in that committee chamber, but yet when we get to the vote to eject me and I gave my position on voting for the amendment, or they heard me clearly enough in that.
Very clearly.
And I had to get it confirmed and whether they could hear me in the chamber, but selective hearing in the chamber now. Apparently a device, if it's not a council device, can't be. Don't know why they're trying to make a big deal of that, but again, the position is if your tech is so bad within that chamber, why have remote attendance? Why have it? Why not make it mandatory? All members need to be back in the chamber. I'm sure us as a collective would be quite glad to be back in that chamber.
I've written to the officers about the quality of the video footage as well as the quality of the audio.
Yeah.
I've watched South Lanarkshire Council's. South Lanarkshire Council's is pristine, crystal clear, volumes perfect all the time. Visuals are great. Ours is really tinny. The quality of the visuals is not good. But the response that I got back was it's perfectly adequate.
If it wasn't as serious, because there's nearly 3,000 people signed this, remember, it would be laughable. And I'm absolutely certain people will be looking at that thinking, what the hell is going on and who is running this place? Because you've now got the same convener on 2 separate occasions, but it has to be directed at our members. So there's a tactic, of course there's a tactic, we understand that there's a tactic that's there, but to ignore 3,000 people, to not make clear that we've actually got an income generating situation that's there. And bear in mind, this I think is the second one, because did you not have another Bedley cemetery? That was treated even more poorly than this. So you've got to think, as a resident of North Lanarkshire Council, what's the recourse? Where does it go? So you take the time to start and get people to sign a petition. You've got a heartfelt opinion and stuff that's there. You take it to who you think can influence a decision or overturn it, and what happens? You get some individual sitting in front of a convener, which incidentally looked for instruction and guidance
Your deputy leader.
from the deputy leader.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hilarious, because as soon as the conversation started, her eyes just focused on the deputy leader, and it was a matter of time before the standing order 50 was going to be imposed.
Well, the funny bit for me in it all was the opposition leader's position, because by the time it got to her in relation to the vote, a speech was allowed again, because that's what this convener does. Anything at all that she thinks she can basically impact any of the mover or the secondary emotion, and it was again looking for the back door to make sure that there was no support shown to the petition, but trying to save face in amongst the eyes of the constituents to say, look, listen residents, we're no supporting this just because of who it's putting forward, not the fact that the brown bin sort of charge. But an interesting point in all of that is I think that people seen exactly, quite rightly so, that it was exposed again, the SNP running for the door where they're not looking to support anything other than their payroll masters. And I think that's becoming quite evident now. Abstain.
It's abstain on everything that's there. There's a concerted effort. I mean, as I say, it's laughable, but it's not, because on the video, of course, you're all asked to vote, and I was watching it, and a young Conservative councillor, Nathan, who I think speaks eloquently sometimes, and he does his research and he puts the point across, and I just watched. I had to laugh, because he was voting against you, Greg, obviously, to get you removed. And there was this kind of swing and flap away with his microphone, this dramatic flap of a microphone. And I'm thinking, have you understood how stupid that looks?
I think he's still offended because I compared them to pandals. I think that's what the problem is with North Lanarkshire Conservatives.
See, after the debacle, and I'm going to call it a debacle because it was a debacle, right? It was ridiculously convened so badly. It's hard to really describe it in full, but even after the fact, the committee's finished, right? I am sure that convener, the leader of the Labour group, will look back on the footage of that to see how well the team performed, because the conveners have all been retrained, of course.
Well, that's an interesting
following the last debacle, right?
That's an interesting point. So after Paul's situation had been ejected, the rumour mill was arrived, and the SNP came out with a public statement to say that, I don't know how they found this out, but again, all conveners have received training on how to chair a meeting.
Yes.
And yet you've got the same individual, now she sparked this, and then you've got the same individual again causing the same issues and the same disregard and disrespect.
Chaos.
Absolute chaos.
It's unfettered chaos that this individual's been allowed to wield, rather than simply turning to the legal and democratic officer and saying,
there you go, can we judge on this?
Can we have a ruling on that, please?
Yeah.
But you see that sorry, just when you mentioned that, because that was another instance. So you got to the stage in that proceeding where there was reference or conversation off mic between the convener and the council officer that was there. And during the vote is that the leader of the opposition, if we have one, I'm not entirely sure who that might be, but whoever that leader of the opposition is supposedly there, is she was given allowed lenience to actually make comment in her speech before she voted.
Before she voted. So this is what happened with Paul as well,
but
if you remember.
Everybody else was closed down.
Yeah.
So where does that relationship sit?
So there's a duty on the convener, right?
Yeah.
The convener was asked a specific question by you, right? To take a ruling from Legal and Democratic as to whether or not the policy, the council's own policy had been breached, right? What the officer came back and said was, he clarified that at the December committee, a policy had been agreed.
Yes.
But he said no more than that. So that didn't answer the question
whether the process
had been breached. So you were quite right to come back in and ask the question again. And what the convener should have said was, Mark, thank you very much for that response. I don't think that's quite what the elected member, Councillor Lennon, is actually looking for. Now, even if the officer had to say, look, you're asking me on the hoof, I'm going to have to go away and come back.
Call a recess
on
10
that.
minutes.
Let me just have a quick look at that. Are we content with that? Then democracy would have been satisfied.
Yeah.
You know?
See when Jim Logue
Standing
gives you
orders
convenership.
standing orders would have been satisfied, and instead standing orders were breached. You were ejected.
Well, I was ejected afterwards, Gerry, because then I put forward standing order 10.1 and I challenged her ruling because her ruling was no legitimate. It never get referred to legal and democratic services. So the problem in North Lanarkshire, I'm coming at you in a second.
North Korea,
the People's Republic of North Korea, Democratic Republic of North Korea. The issue here again is acting rogue agents, acting whatever way they wish to act, especially when it comes to shutting down scrutiny of the public or having their voices heard in a public forum, and it's absolutely disgraceful. And again, how long can this continue? Because you've got a leader of the council who's basically disappeared more times than Houdini when it comes to any public accountability, and now he's putting that onus on his conveners to make sure they're there to take the flak, and you've got an opposition leader backing up her payroll and looking for the employee of the month at Scottish Labour HQ. So, bit bizarre. Davy?
Well, the question was going to be asked, and you've partly answered it. Where does it end? Because you've got a situation now where they have dug this hole. They have got themselves into a situation where if they don't like where they're challenged, verbally or otherwise, on process or just in sheer bloody common sense at times, is that the default position is to eject members for the debating chamber.
If you look at the majority of these debates, it's the Morton Bailey effect in it. That's basically what it is. You set out your position, you kid on, you know the rules, and usually confidence will get you by, but then all of a sudden you're having to backtrack and then look to an officer because you don't understand the standing orders that somebody's quoting to you. And again, it comes back to that level of skill set, Gerry. Right now in that council, we're seeing conveners elected for all walks of life, but none of them for a professional capacity, and that is the most bizarre thing ever.
You could have been shut down, right?
Easily.
You could have been shut down toot sweet, right?
Easily.
By the convener saying, Mark, can we get a ruling?
Yeah.
Mark say, give me 10 minutes. Can we have a recess for 10 minutes? Everybody agrees. They come back, and Mark or one of the other officers comes back and says, Councillor Lennon, having reflected on that, my advice to the convener is that I believe the policy has been followed to the letter. Yeah. And as soon as that ruling comes back, guess what you've got to do?
No problem.
Shut up.
Yeah, no problem.
And that's it. And then the meeting continues. There's no need for the theatrical. There's no need for all the chaos that then ensues.
It's bizarre.
And there's certainly no need then for elected members to be kicked out. What a disgrace. Absolutely disgraceful.
Absolutely bad. Do you think we'll see another conveners training session, or do you think they'll be able to just move on
I don't
quietly?
know. Right. See that training? That training might have been outsourced, because that's generally what happens in North Lanarkshire Council. It'll have been outsourced to some consultancy, and they'll have come in, charged about 4.4 million to deliver convener training, how to convene. I've got a couple of books that I'm quite up. I've spoken about that, and the chair's a really good one.
And the chair. You should get commission on that book, I'm just saying.
And because if you're basing it on what we witnessed last week, the training failed.
Well, just a wee word of note for those who did sign the petition. If you're one of the over 2,800 people in North Lanarkshire who are still aggrieved and don't believe what the convener and officer report stipulates, that nobody's really bothered about this because we've had 65,000 people, we're now earning £1.5 million annually. Thanks very much, Jack. We're all right. I don't think it's over yet, because, as I said, I've referred that to the most senior legal professional within the council and asked them to review it, because ultimately there is a complaint there with regards to the convener's conduct and the clerk's conduct for no answering that charge a 9.1.
Well, in fairness to the clerk, and we've witnessed this in many an occasion, the officers are not compelled to provide any response to you whatsoever. No. They can choose not to. Yeah. And you cannot then badger or press them to give you a response if they choose not to. That's tough luck, mate.
But really, in effect, we have to then start looking at what the legal background is half of these individuals, because ultimately that is a legal forum in there, and you're executing the law to a certain degree. So really, in effect, we need to start asking a lot more questions. But anyway, I don't want to spend all night on this topic. I want to now move on, Gerry, because in the papers where we were at over the summer period, there was a cheeky wee story in there, again, highlighting the plight of Cumbernauld parents and 170 school children that were affected by the scrapping of the school buses again and the school transport idea. Now, that story noted that the council had basically agreed that there was a walking route that was unsafe, and then backtracked in relation to its definition of the walking route and what unsafe actually meant. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves in chaos when the schools come back, and these kids, young as 5, 6 years of age, having to walk 3 miles. And now, it is a very, very ludicrous position, considering the fact we're just talking about the council making 1.5 million there. If we remember, the buses were costing 3 million, so potentially it should be getting put to that, because we don't know what the 1.5 million is going to. Gerry, you're on that. You remember very clearly the whole debacle of the school transport, and the SNP's position was, we are going to create this working group rather than basically put forward a vote of no confidence in the leader of the council again. Their position was the walking group's the answer to all our problems. You've been part of that, Gerry. This is a damning indictment on that.
I mean, we spoke well in advance of the vote itself, right? And we spoke well in advance of the establishment of the Safe Walking Route group, which I'm a part of, and the officers who are involved in that and the members who are involved in that are doing their utmost to provide what is and could best be described as a safe walking route, right? That should have been there anyway, right? That's not a victory. That is no victory. That is, school transportation is gone for those secondary school students, and they will be they can be forced to walk up to 6 miles a day round trip. And for primary school kids, that's 4 miles a day. So kids between 4 and 5 year old walking to school 4 miles a day. To me, it's too long, right? We talk about the walking the daily mile at school, and I think that should be the rule of thumb that's used by the Scottish Government. Here's where the SNP absolutely should be ashamed of themselves. They can change that. They can force North Lanarkshire and all other local authorities down a path by changing the statutory limits that they control. They have a majority with the Greens and other independents in the Parliament. They could overnight change the statutory walking distance to 1 mile for all schools, and that would need to be implemented. But the rub on that is that they would need to provide money to local authorities to pay for those school bus contracts and school taxi contracts, and they won't do it. And that's where we're at. So for the SNP group in North Lanarkshire to come up with this, the victory is this safe walking route.
Oh, it was complete and utter spin, given the fact of the parental campaign. It was
unfair, and it was a red herring.
And I think parents are starting to finally work that out. This was a load of nonsense. You just took us along and strung us along in this path.
Absolutely.
Well, we all attended one evening, you remember, in Motherwell. There was a parental meeting that was run by Green MSP that was there, and we sit and listen to the concerns and of parents, and rightly so. They were deeply concerned. And I remember from there, it goes back to Gerry's point, is that there was no victory in this SNP stance that was there. It was an absolute farce to try and put this forward as being something that they'd won. If any of these discussions that were taking place now at this working group had taken place before even the consideration had taken place, then we wouldn't have arrived at this situation. But there was also that, and I'm going to use misleading, but it's a nice misleading, if there is such a thing, is that in that meeting that we attended in Motherwell, these parents, and there was, what, 70, 80, maybe more than that, sitting there. And it was all about this representative taking the case to Holyrood and trying to, lean on North Lanarkshire Council to do the right thing and change it and everything else. There was never any influence to be had or to bear on North Lanarkshire Council. And even after we spoke about that, they still continued. But you're exactly right, Gerry, without change of legislation, and they cannot do it. They can't do it because of the costs that's involved. Yeah. And that's exactly the bottom line. So, be honest.
Be honest and say that.
That's what it is. It was cost.
So the Labour group claim that they have no money to do this. There's no money in the NLC budget, which comes largely from the Scottish Government, run by the SNP. So both of them can hide under each other. Labour can complain that the SNP don't give them the money.
Well, that's what happens.
Well, it's a symbiotic relationship. They need each other to exist.
And the SNP can say it's within your power to either uphold statutory limits or to reduce them as you see fit. You don't need to maintain the statutory limit, but if the statutory limit changed, then by God you would need to, because that would be the law.
How many times do we sit in that chamber and we've raised the point that the discussion, which should be local, degenerates into Westminster does this, Holyrood does that, Westminster does that.
You need that, because then that way it takes you away from your own incompetence.
Well, that's the only reason it is in that conversation.
That's what it is. That's the reason it's got to be like that, because ultimately then an eye would have to be cast on how the council actually conducts itself during budget setting process. No, let's be honest. We've sat in how many budget meetings over the years?
We sat at the last budget briefing.
We refused to participate because I'm sure the good folk at home would like to know. We will be doing a full show on this. I don't want to dwell too much on it, but we will be doing a full show on the budget setting process nearer the time. But for yous listening at home tonight, now this tends to be what happens normally. We get a menu, a suite of savings in which council officers present and say these are the things that you could potentially choose for. And whereas us as a political group, and we don't want to choose for that menu. We've got other ideas on how we can save money in this council but also reinvest. So let's talk about the state of your local parks, the state of your roads, your pavements, everything else. Let's get back to the conversations. But North Lanarkshire Council doesn't want to have that discussion under El Presidente. He wants to keep it nice and safe and make sure that they're picking for a menu and we don't deviate for that menu. And if I was somebody listening at home thinking, well, I've got an elected member who's not capable of individual thought, my goodness, what is it that's running that place?
There you go, because that goes back to the crux of it, is that the public perception of local government and elected councillors is that they seem to hold some democratic sway and influence
within the party system
over decisions. And the harsh reality is it just doesn't happen.
No.
And it doesn't happen for different reasons, because of party whip,
cha-ching,
because of
cha-ching,
incentives to undertake roles within the council that
Jerry Maguire, show me the money, David.
I need to feel you, Gerry. Show me the money. Gerry, you better yell. Show me the money.
But all these things do contribute.
But there is the incentivisation, the financial incentivisation, right, which exists. There's no getting away from that. But there's also the ceding of responsibility over a long period of time. It's the fact that over years and years and years, and bearing in mind there's only been one party has run North Lanarkshire Council since its conception, right? Powers have been given away.
Continuously. You're
Continuously.
saying powers have been given away, but there's also been an unfair balance of power given away as well in that, because let's take us for talking sake. We questioned that Mears contract, right? We put forward significant scrutiny on that contract position, and that led to us questioning officers. The Chief Executive of North Lanarkshire Council made the decision to take away all briefings thereafter until we apologised. I think we've apologised twice in relation to that. And again, on condition. The condition is if we've offended anybody, we apologise. It would never be our intention to do that. But again, you're not getting budget briefings. You're not getting officer briefings. Now, for the Leader of the Council to allow that as a standard practice, then surely that's a failure in leadership for the Leader of the Council.
I would say that the Leader of the Council probably needs that.
Because he doesn't need that. He needs that as a shield.
Right, well, yeah, because he's very knowledgeable, very thorough, right? There are other members of the group that have got particular specialisms who will ask...
Is that a Liam Neeson moment for taking?
Who will ask horrible and difficult questions repeatedly.
Yeah.
Right? In a respectful way to get the answers that they need.
Yeah.
But often the questions that have been asked are not understood fully by the majority of the members of the council, and that's because the leaders of the groups control how much knowledge members of their group will actually have.
There's no incentive for individual members.
None at all. It's about control.
To challenge
it's
and
about
question.
But again, I would put that and pose that question to members of the public. You think your elected members are in there working to try and come up with the best solutions and everything else for your daily life, because your council unpacks every aspect of your life from the minute you walk out in that street to the minute you go to bed. Council has a role to play in it all. The issue I've got is this council has decided that certain groups or certain politicians within that council are no longer allowed privileged positions of briefings. And again, that makes an unfair political position, because ultimately if you've got Labour, the SNP, the Tories and the Independents all receiving briefings, but you're selectively taking out a political... What would the word for that be? What would the word... Is that political bias?
You want the real ones?
Political bias? Is that the question?
It kind of gets me here because we've both been suspended because of the scrutiny around the Mears thing, and I'm not going down that rabbit hole because I'd be here.
You did your job.
You did your job
there, and you were punished for doing your job.
And there was questioning, and there was hard questioning, and there was terms used within an email that to my mind, to this day, remain accurate as we made it forward. But then you've got the situation where you've got someone in the highest office making decisions that affect every other officer as to how they treat us on the basis of something we said 2 years ago.
And apologise for.
And you think, sorry, that doesn't how the world works. It just
as I say, selective political bias that takes place in the council. I think you're right. I think Jim Logue needs that, Gerry, as a leader of the council, because then that way he's keeping information away for those who will perform that critical scrutiny role. We attended the council in June, the last council before we broke for the summer recess, right? And before the full council started at 4 o'clock, there was a budget briefing. Yes, Treasury Management meeting.
Treasury Management meeting. So all 77 members of North Lanarkshire Council are invited to attend. That only happens 4 times a year, unless there's a special meeting that takes place. And we went to a budget briefing and received nothing beforehand.
Yep.
Absolutely. Not one bit of paper, not one bit of information about what we're going to be talking about. You're expected to arrive at these meetings, receive information on either a screen or on a bit of paper, and you're going to be asked to you're going to formulate questions, deep questions about the budget. That's not going to happen. So to come back to this point, because we've digressed significantly here, because this was about school transport cuts, but we're trying to give people at home an explanation of how we end up with these scathing cuts, and for Labour to come out and blame the Scottish Government for their financial black hole. Well, that takes me nicely onto the next subject matter that I'm looking to speak about, and it is that reported £31 million out of court settlement that was done with no scrutiny, no vote, and it was just basically signed off. Now, Davey, I know you're keenly interested in this subject matter. Go on, you go.
I just think it's an offshoot of the mayor situation, isn't it? Let's be perfectly honest. And it was the paper, I think, that put forward this 31 million based on, I think, a legal document that they'd received, or...
there's a legal document there.
Jerry's giving me all sorts of stuff here.
That's from the court.
There's a court document, effectively, that quoted this figure, and it was then reported within the press that's involved. And we have repeatedly asked for confirmation as to what it was, what the figure was, what was the background to it, who is in the position of delegated authority to make the decisions and stuff that's there. We've had a reply to it that's involved. I don't know what the final figure is as yet. There was an email received that gave a kind of percentage, I think, of the kind of contract value. But let's take a step back, because you had the mayor's situation. I'm not going down there. I'm really not going down there. But the AMEY situation was put forward, and it was cost savings. We've raised the issue that there's a 26% differential in the cost between the next bidder. The court case resulted on the basis of that was there. We've settled, North Lanarkshire have settled out of court for however many millions it happens to be.
Reportedly 31 million.
We made a freedom of information request about further detail, because if they're going to wind up, because North Lanarkshire, remember, had this 30% stakeholding within AMEY Public Services, LLP it was called. So within that situation is that at no point during that presentation of the AMEY recommendation, recommendation. Hot chief, I can never pronounce that properly, but I'll get somebody else's teeth in, so it'll work better next week when I've got my own teeth. But never at that point was there mention that there was what now seems to be, on the account situation, a £3.44 million liability deficit on the winding up of the North Lanarkshire part of the AMEY company. Now, as that stands, and I've sent off questions, as you can imagine, today for clarity on this, because as it stands, North Lanarkshire Council's liable for a third of that. So it has about 1.4 million, plus the settlement cost, out of court settlement cost that's there. So we've got these costs involved in trying to substantiate a procurement recommendation that was put forward to local councillors as being the gold standard of that process. You've got to start to question that as to how we get to that situation. How do we arrive at these figures that just all of a sudden appear as being liabilities towards North Lanarkshire Council, and yet this is the first time we're hearing of it, and only because we ask under a freedom of information request.
Most elected members won't really understand all of that. You understand that because your background is business, your background is finance and pensions, and even broadly, David, right? So we benefited quite a bit from that knowledge base. But I guarantee you that the vast majority of the 77 elected members of North Lanarkshire Council don't fully understand that. So when you're talking about the liabilities that exist through pensions and the make-up of the LLP, that'll just go over people's heads. So when you ask those horrible questions, those are not the type of questions that the administration want to answer.
No, it's not. They're not horrible questions. They're just basic scrutiny questions, to say
but they've never had basic
understand.
They've never had
what it is. One of the criticism that we all get for the general public is, by God, North Lanarkshire Council wastes so much money. I get that on a regular basis, and every week it seems we're falling over situations where there's settlements being made. There's now a potential liability that's sitting in a company that's still to be wound up. There was no answers to a potential pension liability with Mears, albeit that was resolved from what we're led to believe, and that's good news, because that was a huge potential liability was attaching to this. But the other thing I'm going to throw in, and it really annoyed me, and I don't know whether Gerry will want to talk about this or not, is that there was 4 of our group was cited to attend the High Court in Edinburgh. Right. Court of Session, in Edinburgh, over this AMEY legal action against North Lanarkshire Council. And it wasn't a pleasant period, and I know we've briefly touched upon it, I think, before when I was in the programme, but I don't know that something that, and it only came to light during the summer, is that now on 2 occasions we have had 2 pieces of mail, legal mail, that was addressed to yourself, Gerry, and myself, and I don't know about the other 2 lads or not, that had been opened by council staff before we received it.
Legal documents.
Legal documents from the legal representatives of AMEY, and you kind of think.
So your documents have been tampered with.
This is one of the envelopes.
That's
and
the
so you can
envelope.
actually see where it's been ripped open. Where it's been ripped open.
In 3 and a bit years, I don't know anybody else, but certainly in 3 and a bit years, that's the only pieces of mail that I've had that didn't arrive in the situation that it should have arrived on my desk. And I have written to the head of the legal department and saying, I'm sorry, the coincidence of that is not lost in me.
Yeah.
And somebody needs to then be able to convince me that what happened to that.
It's not doable.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a great deal that you can do. I know mines were tampered with. I'm quite happy to say that. I put that to the previous chief officer, the monitoring officer. An investigation allegedly was undertaken and the results were inconclusive. But I know that my mail was open because it was addressed to me and I never opened it. So when I went in and I found it all, and there were court papers.
So what I'm going to highlight is the good folk at home, because again this is a position within the council that is of significant standing and really does deserve complete and utter scrutiny in the position of who made the decision, who settled out of court, who has that authority, all these different aspects of things. But that 3.44 million could have potentially kept school transport running for a year. These continuous out-of-court settlements or payments, etc., and these additional costs to things, if the administration was running the council properly, then really in effect we could see a continuation of school transport. We don't need to charge brown bin permits. We can see our streets clean, swept and safe. And this is where we end up in the bizarre position, because you says it there, every elected member in that chamber, I mean, he's going to understand what he's saying when he's asking these kind of questions.
I should maybe just shut up.
No, you shouldn't, because it's important that somebody's asking it. But they shouldn't be asking it and then end up with a target on their back, which did happen in relation to your standards complaint.
Yeah, there'll be another one, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure.
And that's fine, but invite me back in a couple of weeks, because there's another freedom of information request that's currently sitting there just now, and I've asked for information on the basis of the amount of settlement that North Lanarkshire Council have made, because under this delegated authority, even with the AMEY situation, whatever that figure arrived to be, it was done without consultation or agreement from committee or elected members that's there. So it was put to us that it was a good, agreeable deal for the council to have settled out of court on that basis. How many others is there?
Well, do you know something that amazes me? I look all the time. I'm a wee bit politically geeky in relation to watching other councils and how they operate, with their standing orders, or how they proceed or practice democratic sort of positions within local authorities. And when I watch us in comparison to these other local authorities, the question I am left with every single time, what are these shysters doing? What is it they actually do as an administration? Because they've delegated every aspect of what it is. Conveners need to write to the chief executive and seek approval in relation to any agenda item that goes on for any committee. And then you've got this line and list of things that everything has to be bypassed through officers. This is disgraceful.
Money leaves our council without members knowing about it.
Yeah.
Right? We see the accounts, we see the broad figures of the accounts, but we don't see itemised every single penny that comes in and every single penny that goes out. And this AMEY thing that was ongoing, we would never have known that money had left the council. We would be blissfully unaware about it had we not been cited.
Last point, because I know you do want to move on. Interesting that you raised that point, because on the AMEY situation that's there,
well, there you go.
Is that the response that I've had back so far is that any payment that was made to AMEY and any liability effectively that we were talking about there in the wind-up of this company are going to be wrapped into the North Lanarkshire accounts. They're not going to be discrete.
Well, they won't be itemised.
So it won't be itemised, So all this stuff is lumped into an expenditure that shows
potentially be
of
31 million pounds.
890 million, I think it is, the expenditure for North Lanarkshire.
Here's an interesting point for you. Just before the summer break, and as that story broke in the Sunday Mail again, I wrote to Jim Logue, council leader, and asked for an explanation. And as yet, despite 2 follow-up emails, there's been absolutely nothing. And I should also put out there as well, in relation to the brown bin stuff, we did write to Councillor Helen Loughren and asked her to come on via whatever method she would like, telephone, webcast, whatever, it doesn't really matter, but they got her on, and unfortunately she never responded in a language. Standing Order 50, remove him the new. Councillor Louise Rorty, the deputy leader of the Labour group, again, unfortunately that fell on deaf ears as well. So we will continue with an open invitation for these individuals, because it's imperative that the good folk at home understand how decisions are being made against them. I want to go on now. I'm not going to let you no, right, because that's a nice segue right there. The finance of the council to another story that broke over the summer months in relation to a subject matter you wanted to discuss, which is the suspension of the convener of finance and resources.
This is a difficult one, right? And I'm going to take a wee step back with this one, because months ago the convener that was there, finance and resource, and I'm going to quickly jump back because Gerry mentioned something called Treasury Management System, and I know he's falling asleep, but basically Treasury Management System is really important.
You're triple wide, by the way.
Because it's about debt and borrowing, about how the whole shebang moves forward on a financial basis, right?
So just put some that one listener to sleep.
Wake up, it's coming. So you've got to understand the implications of that. I questioned the convener that we're talking about that's there and said, look, a lot of the information that's here, how many people actually understand what's happening that's there? And I was directed, yes councillor, go on off and take yourself and do the Treasury Management toolkit system and training, and then you'll understand better.
Was this the former Mayor of Workington?
That was Councillor Duffy Lawson, as it was at the time.
The former Mayor of Workington.
I did the training because it may be me financial, and I'll tell you, it was quite difficult, even with a financial background. And I then emailed.
How many others have done the training?
One.
What do you mean one? Everybody on that committee, you're the only person that's done that training. Surely that's mandatory for finance.
I think there's 2 people now.
Surely the convener.
Surely the convener. The convener's not done the training. The training's not mandatory.
Emailed him 3 times to confirm how he found the training and how he got through it.
I only wonder.
Did you give him your notes?
I give my notes. I didn't need notes, Gerry. I just answered.
My goodness.
So yeah, the situation then, and Gerry's referred to the lad that's involved, and a story broke over the summer, as we know, about
suspension of the Labour Party.
From the UK Labour Party to investigate it. Yeah. So that's not just a wee local issue that's going to be kind of looked at, and it's forced the resignation of Councillor Duffy Lawson as being the convener for Finance and Resource Committee. Yeah. It's forced his standing down just now, or it's not expulsion, but I think it's removal just now, temporary removal.
Ironically, it was the Environment and Climate Change Committee and voted me out the chamber another week.
Really?
And we don't know what the allegations are. There was suggestion in the paper, obviously, that there was a kind of sexual misconduct nature, and whether they've got evidence of that or not is nothing to do with me, effectively.
So he's resigned. He's resigned for being the finance convener. Who's the finance convener at the moment then?
Honestly, I don't know.
So there's no.
I can't remember who was the
temporary appointment.
No, I think it was Councillor Fisher that was
deputy.
He was previous.
So Tom takes back Oregon then.
He was, as I understand it, before the former Mayor of Workington.
Tom was the finance person. Is it a case of a fallout with him and Jim, or is it? What's the reason for Tom to take a back seat? Because it's a convenership. You're not going to get up an extra £18,000 a year on top of your wage.
So that particular councillor now sits as of the 25th of July as an independent councillor, so no longer part of the Labour North Lanarkshire group.
Right.
But on his register, he's still a member of the Labour Party.
How can that be?
He's still a member of the Labour Party. He's still a member of the Scottish Cooperative Party and is treasurer of that. He is a member of the Jewish Labour movement.
Oh.
And he's a member of Wrangham Bowling Club in my ward. And And he's also, as I understand it, a member of one of the outside bodies for the council for adoption, fostering and family placement. He's a member of that panel.
I should make it clear that you're innocent until guilty.
Absolutely. So, but I think the point, Greg,
I think there's a critical point in that. If it's a case that it is allegations of a sexual nature,
you
then
stand down for everything.
Stand down for everything.
Stand down for everything, and allow the process to take clear.
Place, yeah.
And indeed, if you come out the other side of that and you're found not to be you're exonerated, and let's be honest, we all hope that is the case. I mean, I don't want anybody to be then you can you re-begin, but you have to protect those individuals where you're members of, because
that committee again, what was the last one?
So it's an outside body, adoption, fostering and family placement panel.
Right.
So my understanding of that is they will make determinations
within the council
around suitability for foster placements for children to go to foster families and things like that.
But that's within the council, that committee, or does that sit as an external body?
It sits as an external body.
Right. Okay.
But I think you have to take the right approach to this and just step back from it all. And then once you're exonerated, you can go back in.
It's difficult because your conduct and behaviour, etc., is under scrutiny. We know that, and that's part of the role under public life, etc. And I'm guessing that you're kind of fair game to a lot of potential sort of damaging words, and realistically, then you've got to defend yourself.
No, I think it's even more difficult being married to the Lord Provost as well. But you know what I mean, that surely has a bit of pressure and stress in relation to your relationship and that kind of thing. Now, obviously, as I say, we're talking sort of God, I can't even think, hypothetically. Yeah. But as I said again, I'm not looking to dwell on this, but as I say again, if you're carrying that position, you've resigned as the finance convener, then surely you resign for whatever.
I mean, this is a big story actually, because this particular individual is the finance spokesperson.
Making as a convener.
Indeed, but making big statements around the budget deficit. And I mean, I remember last year when one of the videos came out from corporate comms, and he featured very, very heavily on it. So speaking authoritatively around about the council and budgets and all the rest of it,
cutting a school transport.
So it's a big story.
Yeah, all of that.
Press name or press titles was on the basis of the finance chief. I always remember reading it in one of the local presses. Was that the finance chief was putting forward these things it was around the budget time and savings and all that kind of stuff. And realistically, that is quite a pronounced position, because you are speaking on behalf of the council in terms of the finance stuff. So.
Well, on that note, we're going to cut to a couple of songs, take a wee break, and then when we come back, we'll be opening the phone lines up. But there's a couple of subject matters I still want to talk about. And just for those good folks that listening at home, telephone number is 07379 399 228. Phone lines will open roughly about 8:05, but just get your calls in early so that you're not be held in a queue. Following on for Queen, and another one bites the dust. I see Councillor Duffy Lawson's in great company then with former Labour councillors like Angela Campbell and Bill Shields to leave the Labour Party and sit as independents.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, gentlemen, moving on, and for the good folk at home, we've just returned for our wee break. We're going to be going to the phone lines very, very soon. So as soon as the calls start coming in, we'll transfer over to that. But in the meantime, I've actually had a couple of emails come in, and I'll read you them out in a wee second, just as soon as I can get the bloody thing opened up. Where am I? So, we've got Brian who's wrote in, can you ask your guests, when a councillor gets ejected for presenting a petition with nearly 3,000 signatures, is that a functioning democracy or just ruled by brute force? Well, that's quite a relevant point. On you go, gentlemen.
I think it's an affront to democracy and local government in general. I think when people take the time to sign a petition in that kind of volume, it's the responsibility of the local democracy to pay that the due respect it deserves. Not to shut it down, have a proper debate, understand exactly what elected members are trying to do when they're bringing forward, because I absolutely believe that the convener of that committee knew exactly what you were trying to do, and it was to bring a debate forward to discuss whether or not process had been followed, because that's important, and that had to be shut down.
Well, it's their process, but it's their policy.
That's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah, and so as soon as somebody sticks to the letter of law in relation to their policy, their standing orders, and again, we have this mad sort of rule within the council, and I can kind of understand it, because ultimately, again, you wouldn't get much business done, because we would keep bringing it up at every committee and every meeting, but it's just called the 6-month rule, and that 6-month rule, in my opinion, is there to hinder any prospective decisions being overturned or any subject matter coming back to a chamber. But the difference in this part is, and that's one of the key reasons I wrote to that person within the head of legal services, was to highlight the fact that the 6-month rule can't apply in this instance, because the original point of order that was raised hadn't been answered. So really, in effect, we had asked them whether or no the process had been breached. No responses came in relation to that. It just ended up, I think at one point they even turned around and said something about furniture. Is it point 9 something to do with committee seating arrangements or something? I don't know what it was, but it was rather bizarre. But again, goes to highlight how this council seems to treat its members, and do you want opposition? And do you know, it sounds like sour grapes for us sometimes, but it really isn't. I think that we kind of understand the fact that if you've got the numbers, you've got the control and make things happen whatever way you want. So it's not really about that, it's more about the democratic deficit that exists.
I think people in North Lanarkshire, the constituents, need to understand that that's exactly the relationship. The Labour group, supported by the Tories and a few independents, can and will shut down debate if the administration doesn't want to talk about something difficult, whether that's brown bins, Bedley Cemetery, school transport, the closure of John Smith Pool, Matt Busby, 39 active and creative community facilities. Shut it down.
But there you go, the people in my ward there in relation to Bedley Cemetery. Bedley Cemetery's been waiting an extension for 15 years. We were told that we would get a definitive answer in August at a community board meeting by a senior manager within the council.
August?
You can stand on my comments. You can hold me accountable in relation to these comments back in February or whatever it was. And then we get to August, and then where's Bedley Cemetery? So that same Environment and Climate Change Committee, the agenda item before we get to the petition, there's a cemetery strategy that's laid out, and Bedley Cemetery's not even on that. And then, really, in effect, if you look at it, the capital expenditure for this term has already been committed. So it's next term's capital expenditure. So potentially you're looking at
nothing before 27.
Nothing before 27. But here's the worst bit about it. You're talking about nothing before, well, to the end of 32. So you're talking, we might not see anything until 2032. Now you're talking about interments and people passing in local villages, and you want to keep it local rather than having to move into main towns and bury your loved ones and inter your loved ones. It's shocking, absolutely shocking. Anyway, another email that I've got here is serious question. When was the last time Jim Logue took public questions, attended a real community meeting, or explained these decisions directly? Because from out here it looks like he's hiding. Do you know what? I'm going to send that person a message and see if they'll call in the show as well. But or to use, what do you think?
Well, I said before that Jim, I mean, he's a seasoned politician, and I can never understand, because he's actually articulate. He knows the process. He's been there for, I don't know, it's 34, 36 years. And that takes some doing to be a politician in North Lanarkshire for that length of time. So he knows the process. He's a strong orator. He's got an understanding of it all. But there is this reluctance to engage in debate, and it's closed down all the time. And go back to a previous point you just said there, I know the previous email, there's an expectation from local residents that they're actually represented, and the sad thing is that that's not happening. The one positive, and you were all there, that our party actually took ourselves out to the street a couple of nights last week just to chap doors in different areas and gain public opinion and get an understanding of what they think of the current system. And I think, me personally, I chapped on numerous doors and there was only one person that was happy with the status quo. Everyone else had said that Labour and SNP are failing within North Lanarkshire. They are fed up with the cuts. They are fed up with this. They are fed up with not being heard. And the next question was, are you open to different ideas? Because obviously that's what we're trying to promote that's there. And majority, I would say, have said, look, we would remain open depending on what it is that you're putting in front of us. So I'd beginning to think that at least there is an appetite for people to say, actually, this system's broken. The system that's there just now is shackled because we are not being heard. And when you've got a leader that doesn't stand up, take questions, enter debate freely, doesn't come on a radio show, you know, just to make his point, because he would be treated with respect we used to. I don't always. So I just don't understand that.
Again, but I'm going to ask you a question. When was the last time Jim Logue was held accountable in North Lanarkshire? Now, he's been the Labour leader for God knows how long now, way back, before 2017.
Greg, he's accountable for everything.
No, I get he's accountable for everything, but when was the last time he was held to public account?
Well, see when you try to hold him to public account, he makes allegations against you.
Right.
So the allegations that he made against us as a group, and I've read this
conspiracy
before,
theorists,
but he would suggest that you have, because you dare to ask questions and you know, try and prize answers from him, you are accused of having an exclusive focus on conspiracy theories. And when you're in the chamber, you make suggestive allegations against officers. You give no substantiation.
But it's factual.
You ask suggestive and leading questions. You do so in a lot. He's a great orator and a wordsmith. Yes. Wow. You do so in a long-winded, incoherent, factually inaccurate way.
Gents,
to try and besmirch.
We've got a call coming in. Hello there.
Hiya. My question is,
can I put the volume up? I would need them to call back in, so the caller can call back in. I think I messed that up there. I forgot how to take a phone call. Right, anyway, Gerry, sorry for interrupting.
No, so that's it. Whenever you do raise questions and you bring forward proper scrutiny to ensure that, you know, things are happening, that the public pound has been spent properly, you're faced with nonsense allegations that you're putting pressure on officers, or you're acting in a bullying or harassing way.
So we're going to cut to the phone line again. Let's see if I can get it. Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, I can. Aye.
You need to put the volume up.
I've got the volume up.
I don't.
Nah, I don't think it's working tonight for some strange reason. It's always temperamental, this phone line. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very, very faintly.
Hello? You can hear the person very faintly?
Very faintly, I can hear you.
Right, let's try and get that volume up further. Get you. Can you hear me now? Can you hear the person now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
How you doing,
Hiya.
caller? What's your question?
Not bad. My question is, how much do you think Labour will raise council tax by?
How much do we think Labour will raise council tax by?
I think we've already had the indication.
10%? Do you think it's going to be that?
So it looks as if that for the next 3 years there's a 10% strategy, the potential of a 10% strategy each year over the next 3 years. So if that is played out, then people really need to brace themselves.
Oh, it's considerable. I mean, 10% for this year, next 2 years, that's a significant amount of money. So, and it looks as though, as Gerry said, that has what has been put forward.
Well, it'll be 20% in total then, or 2 years, 2 financial years, if you think about it in that context. So it was a 10% raise this time.
No, but it's 10 and 10 and 10, so it compounds. The issue really is that goes back to that point that we spoke about earlier on. None of this was discussed prior to the budget briefing. The Treasury Management meeting that we attended, receiving absolutely no paperwork before it, no potential to assess the impact of that, and therefore to challenge the administration and to seek clarity from the officers about why we are deciding to employ that level of increase.
Colin, I'm going to ask you the question, would an additional 10% have a massive impact on you and your family?
I think it would have a massive impact significantly on us, just going off the conversations that I've had with people.
Yeah, and financially yourself, again, you've got a cost of living rise, you've got food cost reported inflation 4%, just or 40%, I think it was, in relation to food inflation. It was just out today or yesterday. And again, we're seeing rises galore and potentially more tax rises coming in October. Do you think it would be fair of the council to raise council tax in that instance then, or should the council, and I'm going to ask you this question, caller, should the council be going back and looking at its ambition projects and whether or no the 2% that they'll be taking off of council tax to fund projects, the infrastructure investment, or should we be going back and re-looking at how we can actually save money to make sure that we're not transferring that cost into council tax?
I think we've got to look at it through the people and how we can help each other. I think that it's going to impact us all significantly.
I agree. Well, I think it is going to impact us all.
I don't know what you're paying just now. I don't know what your banding is, but just say you were paying £120 a month this year.
Yep.
Next year it would rise to around 145. The following year it will rise to 160. So there you go.
And add your brown bin charge on top of that as well. There you go, another 40
so you go from 120 to 160. That's for some people that's
a lot of money.
A week shopping.
Yes. Well, it's more than that now because again you've got food inflation that's going through the roof.
Well, what are you getting for it? Are you getting increased? Are you getting an increased service? Are you getting improvements in your service?
No, absolutely.
Are you getting more football pitches? Are you getting more swimming pools? Are you getting safer roads, better quality roads?
Your grass getting cut?
Is your grass getting cut?
Streets swept and cleaned? I don't think so.
Could I ask the caller just a question for you, if you're still there, caller? How do you think that you get your view heard within council?
How do I think they'll get my view heard?
Yes.
I think members coming in and speaking to communities individually would be a great start for the council to actually get involved with the people that they are supposed to be helping out.
Yeah.
No, caller, listen, I hope we've answered your question. I take it, is that okay for us to leave it there?
Aye, that's fine.
Listen, thank you very much. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers now.
I think we've got our caller here. 2 seconds. So basically, if we look at it and we look at it in the round, you're talking about potentially it could be higher than 10% in relation to the council tax coming because, again, services, service costs, you've got national insurance contributions that have been landed on the council, you've got all these different implications and impacts for what the current financial climate of the country is and what can be imposed for the Labour government. So I don't know. I think it could potentially be more.
And we need to plough on with our projects.
Yeah, which is again, will they be in jeopardy? I doubt it. Because the 2% that they're going to take off for the community investment fund and put towards community hubs and various other things. And as I said again, is that the right ambition during times of economic turmoil?
I'm not sold personally on the community hub project. I don't know what they deliver. I don't know what tangible benefits, and I might be wrong in that. I think maybe it's too early in the process.
What I would rather see is listen, let's take for instance, I've said this a few times, community boards, there's 9 community boards in this authority made up of local groups, local people. It's a partnership between the council, voluntary sector and local residents. So if you've got that in existence, this community board structure, so you're there to talk about antisocial behaviour, there to talk about investment and play parts and all this kind of stuff, but the council highlights we're not the funder, we are the partner. We bring the partners around the table to agree and suggestions and look at what sort of shared resources. It's not about council getting involved, it's about what the partners are going to deliver. But here's a crazy idea, that 2% of council tax, let's say for talking's sake, that's goodness knows how many £1 million a year, divvy it up between the 9 community boards, rather than investing in buildings and building new buildings, which is a modern sort of sense of PFI. Again, you're still burdened with that debt. That debt is going to be paid over a significant amount of time, and the covenants are going to, interest rates are galore in relation to that. Why not allow the communities to decide, you know what, if it's a kind of, I can use my own ward area for instance, the Pivot Centre, well, I want to invest this year the money in the Pivot Centre, let's do that up, modernise it. We don't need a new building, but let's modernise that. Well, next year I don't need to invest the same again in the Pivot Centre, so we can move. Is it a case that you're looking for road bumps, speed bumps in your local community to cut down on perceived speeding or whatever it may be?
Will reach a point where the general public will just not accept this continual road that we're going down and increasing this and cutting the next thing. So you're coming at it from both sides. And one of the meetings that I managed to get right, and I don't want to be technical about it again, but I've said since I came into council there has to be a means of rejigging how this is done. And one of the questions I had for the Chief Finance Officer was that can we start to allocate what they call capital receipts? The capital receipts is just money that you get for selling off assets and land and property and stuff that you just don't need. And also looking at the reserve situation, because just now all we're doing is increasing things that hurt people, cutting the services at the other side that we think we can justify, but we actually need, when we potentially have a system where we can generate money from capital, and we've got a situation there where we've got reserves, which the council rightly hang on to a certain extent, but they must be able to be used. I mean, it's rainy day funds and all this kind of stuff, that's great, and I'm trying to watch my language, but it's pouring. Yeah. You know, in North Lanarkshire it's pouring.
So 200.
Sorry, on you go, Gerry. Sorry.
So we've got about 250 million in
It's
reserves.
a huge amount in reserves.
How much money do you think that generates just on its own?
An interest? Yeah, quite a substantial amount, I would imagine. I would imagine you would get about 6 million a year in interest.
So, and I'm pretty sure that we use that.
6 million?
But I don't know that we do.
Yeah. When have we ever been getting a report or anything in relation to investment in that?
There's a whole lot of financial questions, and you've got to trust to a certain extent that the officers are in a position, because they're there, they're the experts. We're just the transients in terms of elected members coming in. But there shouldn't be this reluctance to answer questions and be open to looking at alternative suggestions.
But again, I would come back to a fundamental point. Is it a case that councils can't be funded appropriately because there's 32 councils in this country? So 32 councils, is it a case that we need to deplete the number of councils? Is it a case we need to review public sector?
Yes.
And actually take a strong position on this and say, do you know what, we're reducing that from 32 down to 25.
Absolutely, we don't need 32 local authorities.
Because ultimately then you can fund it appropriately rather than trying to fund each individual council.
Services would still exist.
But it doesn't matter, then that way you're taking away a layer of bureaucracy that exists now. Again, look at North Lanarkshire Council. How much does that pay in senior management per year? What's the overall cost of that now? I get that people leave and that's deemed as a recurring saving and all this kind of stuff, but really in effect, how much do we pay? Is it too many chiefs and not enough Indians? Or is it a case, if you'd done a review of 32 local authorities, there would be substantial savings made within the senior management element of things?
It's not just the senior management.
I'm just using that hypothetical.
No, you're right.
That's not a directed or targeted attack.
No, I think the last time we asked the questions, because it was a freedom of information request that we didn't make but someone else
The last time I mentioned a service, I ended up with a standards complaint, although I never named any individual, so I'll stay away with it.
Collectively, the kind of higher management, and they run a £1 billion business, but I think collectively it was something like 2.1 million in terms of salary and
but that's that,
pension contribution,
that across 32 local authorities. But so if the costing at that level, again, if you get the opportunity to sort of cut the fat a wee bit in relation to how you're funding local government, well, you've saved a significant amount.
They would
already
argue that it has been, that it has been cut. There has been services
North
cut.
Lanarkshire as an example. I'm using 32.
I get that, but I just think there has to be a departure from what is seen as the traditional way of doing it and the traditional way of generating income. And if you continue doing what you're doing, you're going to, this is Gerry's phrase, you continue doing what you're doing, you get the same result.
We talk about procurement continuously. We often have a conversation in relation to procurement. You always raise a point, Gerry, about how we reach the plateau or the threshold where economy of scale is no longer viable. So potentially
people have learned how to play that game really well.
Well, again, what I would come back to is if you merge, let's say hypothetically, for talk's sake, South, North Lanarkshire, maybe West Lothian, whatever it may be, and you merge 3 councils together, then there's an economy of scale that exists there. So coming back to that point, and whether or no services still need to be paid for it, absolutely 100%. But the buying power of that local authority then becomes so much bigger than what it was originally. Surely discount rates, etc., are going to apply when they go to purchase aspects and things for service.
You've got to look at the manageability of something that size. I mean, you've already got, I think, is it 2 or 3 councils in Scotland just now that are on the brink of bankruptcy, and that's major. I mean, I think it's like, was it Clackmannan, Falkirk, and well, I'm going to say Perth and Kinross, but I might be wrong with that one. But there's 3 that are effectively in the stages of declaring bankruptcy because they can't balance the books, and there's a legal obligation, as we know, to produce a balanced budget every year. So that's why there has to be this departure. You cannot just continually say...
So is the answer living then being able to have the ability, because I'm sure councils will have the ability, and elected members in particular, can we move capital with revenue? Would that be a possibility?
You can do if you can sustain it. Is what I'm trying to have a discussion with the Chief Officer in Finance about. So if there's a sustainability about the capital receipts that you generate next year, then that can be used to secure revenue and hence services, and that's what I just want to explore. I don't have the answers to it.
I don't have the answers.
I'm not an accountant.
I'm spitballing.
But effectively, there has to be a conversation, adult conversation, that takes you down the route to say, are there other ways that we can tackle this, rather than this menu situation that you're giving out and say, there you go and pick what you want to cut.
Well, I'm sure
options.
The council leader will be ready at the full council meeting to highlight this conversation about the idiocy that exists within these 3 members. How dare they have such dangerous...
I'll tell you what, the better no cut. We enjoyed a fabulous game of golf at Lochview.
Yes, we did.
On Sunday morning.
Yes.
The course in brilliant condition.
Great course.
And the front 4 holes is normally pretty boggy and pretty wet. But because it's been dry, it was absolutely fabulous. Perfectly playable. Invest a wee bit of money
on
the drainage to make sure that when it's wet, that water has got some runoff.
The car park was full, people couldn't get parked, and the course was...
I'm sure when the next ACC review comes in, that'll be one of the ones that are looking to cut, considering it's the last of the 18-hole golf courses.
It'll be interesting because there'll be no pandemic.
I can't use the COVID figures.
So the footfall things out the question.
You'll be glad to hear that's us coming to the end of tonight's show. David, thank you very much for joining us as always. I'm sure that you found that as pleasurable as we did, and as always, thank you at home. But again, the caller, the people that have emailed in, this is going to be an ongoing item on the show.
Points tonight, actually.
And again, we're really interested in hearing your views. Is North Lanarkshire Council being run to the best and what it should be ran? Do your local elected members represent you in public discourse? And is it a case that you would like to see something different? We're always open to suggestions and conversation, and that conversation will continue on Thursday when the podcast goes live. Again, I am going to use this as an opportunity for a shameless plug, because there's a thing called Patreon, and I've never heard it before, but I've lost the wee bit of it. Gerry, where am I? So if it's a case that you've any interest in supporting us, then we're on Patreon at What's the Point North Lanarkshire. Just type that in apparently, and it will come up and it will give you a whole list of options. Anything you would like to add before we finish up for the evening?
No, just to thank David for coming along. As always, it's been enlightening. Always enjoy listening to what he's got to say.
Yeah.
And getting some of his wisdom and experience.
I'll take that as a compliment, but it's been a pleasure.
It's the last. There'll be no more.
I was just going to slag his golf on Sunday, because how good the course was didn't help his golf, but never mind.
Good enough to beat you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been What's the Point. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.